she was talking about how there were a few times where she was positive that she was going to die because she had seen a lot of other people die. She said that she wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid that nobody knew that she had existed. That was one of the saddest things that I'd ever heard in my life. I think it touched me so much because I felt the same way. That's really what I was afraid of too. When you think about it from that perspective, everything takes on a different meaning, right? When you think about how you want to be remembered, everything looks different. I mean, if you let the fear hold you back, what else is it holding you back from?
I believe the biggest problem in the world is that people don't understand themselves enough. This show is designed to help you understand your INFJ personality, heal from your past, and create a life that you love. I'm Sarah Kuhn, and this is the Quiet Ones podcast. Are you in tune with your intuition? Does it speak to you loud and clear, or do you question the messages that you get from it? I have to admit that I'm not always 100% in tune with my intuition as much as I would like to be. It's so easy to let all of the day-to-day things get in the way. But I want to help you get back on track and get perfectly in tune with your intuition. So I created a 30-day challenge to help you get really clear on what your intuition is trying to tell you and to help you tune in. The Tune Into Your Intuition Challenge offers simple, structured daily lessons and exercises that will get you in tune with your inner guide and make it easier for you to hear that inner voice that's trying to tell you exactly what you need to do. I've mastered this practice through my own deep desire to listen to my inner guide. Spending time listening to my intuition is the most important thing that I do every single day. It's kept me calm, healthy, and grateful no matter what may be going on in my life. You might find this kind of personal growth intimidating or think it's impossible to make these kinds of changes, or that you don't have time to dedicate to this challenge. I'm going to help you get through those fears right now, though. I've laid out a plan for you and I'll guide you every single step of the way. It doesn't matter whether you've been leaning into your intuition for years or are a complete beginner. All you have to do is show up. And here's my promise. By the end of this 30-day challenge, you'll have a solid foundation of guidance, a calm and grateful mind, and an improved connection to your inner guide. The Tune Into Your Intuition Challenge starts January 1st, but if you sign up now, you'll gain first access to all of the prep work that will set you up for the extraordinary changes available to you in this challenge. Sign up now at infjwoman.com/intuition. There's a link in the show notes. Sign up now and consider your New Year's resolutions taken care of. Go to infjwoman.com/intuition to sign up now.
Somebody sent me a direct message on Instagram not too long ago, and I wanted to talk about it because I thought it was so rude, but also so funny at the same time that I thought it was worthy of talking about. And before we get to that, I wanted to mention that this is the 100th episode of the Quiet Ones podcast. And I'm so very excited that we made it to 100 episodes. There have been several times where I didn't think that we would. I'm just so thankful for every single one of you that listens to the show. It's made such a huge difference in my life. I've met so many amazing people through doing this podcast, and I just wanted to let you know that I really appreciate you and that I'm just so thankful. It's been such a blessing for me, and I've learned so much about myself, so much about being an INFJ, so much about what I'm capable of since I decided to start a podcast. And I hope that you've learned a lot too. I hope that it's been as much of a blessing to you as it is to me. So that's kind of what we're talking about today as well, and what this comment from Instagram was about. So the comment said something like, You're not an INFJ. You can't be an INFJ because you have a podcast and you have a YouTube channel. And obviously INFJs don't have podcasts and they don't record videos. And I thought it was so funny because I was like, really? Like, you're saying that INFJs, because we're introverts, like we're not capable of communicating with people? We're not capable of fighting through our fears? Like, that's incredibly hilarious to me. It's also incredibly rude because it's like they're putting INFJs in this tiny little box and saying, okay, you are born with a certain set of skills, and this is all you'll ever have. And you're born with a certain set of fears and a certain set of limitations, and you need to stay inside of this little box and never be anything else. Now, I'm not saying that you can change your personality because I truly don't believe that you can change your personality. However, I do believe with all of my heart and soul, and I know to be true, that you can face your fears. You can fight those fears. You can learn how to overcome your fears. You can learn how to fight through them, even if you have to fight through them every time you turn on the video camera, like I do. Even if you have to fight through them every time you decide to record a podcast episode. Even if you pace around and have like this weird routine of listening to music and procrastinating and listening to music and procrastinating and then overthinking, but then eventually you decide, okay, I made a deadline, so I have to make this work, and this is what's happening. We are turning on the video camera and we are recording a podcast episode today because today's the day. I don't believe that you should just be put in a box. I don't believe that you should read all about INFJs and say, okay, this is me. This is all I get to do for the rest of my life. I read about INFJs and I share that information because I want you to know, first of all, that you're not alone, that there are other people out there who feel the same way that you do. I also want you to know that there are people who have felt that way, who have moved past some of those fears, who have challenged those fears head on and said, you know what, I want to do something else. I don't want to stay in this box. I want to be something more than just what I have been. I don't think that it's better or worse if you challenge your fears in different ways. I don't like to compete with other people. I don't like to compete with other INFJs. I don't like to call people out for not being INFJ enough, which is exactly what this person was doing. What I like to do is challenge a past version of myself. I like to say, I feel better about myself because I'm doing something that the person that I was 5 years ago would have never even thought about doing. That's how I look at my growth. And that's how I challenge myself in the future too. I talked about last week, and I've talked about this for a few weeks now. I've been thinking about New Year's resolutions already, and there are things that I want to do. And one of those things is expand my YouTube channel. I would like for my YouTube channel to like actually have regularly scheduled videos on it. I have tons of ideas. I have lists and lists and lists, which is part of my procrastination. But I'm not so great at consistently scheduling things, like consistently recording things, because it is fighting a fear. And a lot of times the fear gets the better of me. So my goal for next year is to figure out a way around that. So either I record a whole bunch of videos on the days that I feel like it, on the days that I can push myself, or I figure out how to push myself more consistently. And honestly, it's probably going to be a combination of both of those things. But I mean, that's the goal. And another goal is learning how to push myself in a different way. So I've had this idea of making videos in different places other than just the comfort and safety of my apartment. I want to make videos about different places around Boston, and honestly that's quite terrifying to me because I've never been in a place around Boston where there hasn't been other people. So that means that I have to talk to a camera when there are other people around, and talk about terrifying. I mean, that's horrifying to me. And I've been doing video podcasts for 2 years now. I've been making videos for YouTube since about the same time that I've been doing my podcast, maybe a little bit earlier, like a month earlier, maybe. So a little more than 2 years now. But it's still terrifying to me to think about recording videos with other people around because I've never done that. The only videos that I've recorded where other people have been there are the ones that I do on Zoom. And honestly, it's been a long time since I've done a Zoom interview too. So, I mean, first of all, like I said, I think that the comment that you're not an INFJ because you have a podcast is so funny. But it's also rude as well. And I wanted to bring up something that I've been talking about because this quote has just hit me so much. And I thought that I posted it on Instagram, and I thought that some people's reaction to it was really funny too. But there's this quote by Jordan Peterson. He says, "You're morally obligated to do things other than that which you like," which basically means that you're morally obligated to do things that make you uncomfortable. You have to. That's, first of all, it's a part of life, but it's a part of where you find meaning in life too. A lot of people ask me, where do you find your purpose? Like, how do you know what you were put on this earth to do? Well, if you never do anything, you're never going to find it. If you sit in the comfort and safety of your room or your living room, your apartment, your house, you're never going to find it. If you just do the thing that you've always done, you're always going to be as miserable as you've always been. In fact, it's going to keep getting worse. Because if you're miserable right now, maybe you're miserable in your job, maybe you're miserable in your life, maybe you just feel like you could be doing more. That's not going to stay the same. It's just going to keep getting worse. In order to fix that problem, you have to do something other than that which you like. Do something that you don't like. Do something that makes you uncomfortable. That was one of the reasons why I decided to start a podcast. I mean, if I'm being really honest, I started my blog in December of 2018. I started it because I wanted to write, and I had wanted to write for years and years and years and years. So I started that, and then I started a Facebook group, and I was trying to figure out how to get people to engage on the Facebook group. And so I asked people what podcasts they listen to. And somebody said that she listened to a podcast called Don't Keep Your Day Job. And she said it was so awesome that you just have to listen to it. And up until that point, I had never wanted to have my own business. I always wanted to work for somebody else because I didn't want the responsibility of having my own business. So I started listening to this podcast, and all of a sudden, I wanted to start my own business. And I was positive that I could, and I knew it was going to work. And it was just like this amazing thing. Well, then this lady on the podcast starts talking about having your own podcast. And I'm like, ooh, I don't want to do that. Like, you have to record yourself talking, and you have to talk about stuff for just like a long time. Like, I don't want to do that. The other option would be trying to find other people to talk about things, and then I would have to interview them, and that sounds equally horrifying. So why would I do that? But then the more that she talked about it, the more I was like, hey, that really sounds like a good idea. And then I started like toying with the idea of having a podcast. And it was one of those things that was equally terrifying and exciting. And I don't know about you, but anytime I get faced with something that is equally terrifying and exciting, it's like I can't not do it. I have to do it. I have to know what's going to happen. Is something else that Jordan Peterson was talking about that I thought was really, really awesome. A lot of people get stuck in this idea of what would my life be like if I had made different choices, right? And he was talking about how you'll never know what your life would be like. You imagine what it could have been like if you would have made a different choice at a different time in your life, but you don't really know because so many things hinge off of one decision that you make. It's not like you can just go back and change one decision and see what would happen. So I feel like now, hopefully at least, making bigger decisions, thinking about it that way will be a lot easier because it's like, I have to know. I can't not know. If there's something that's equally terrifying and exciting, it's like, I'm doing that. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I have to do it. And when it came to starting a podcast, I was like, I have no idea how to do this. I had edited videos in the past, but it had been a while and I didn't want to be on video. So the whole first season of my podcast is on audio. And I didn't know how to record audio. I didn't know how to edit audio, but I'm like, it's fine. I'll figure it out. So I bought like a super cheap microphone from Amazon, which I probably didn't even need. And nowadays I tell people, don't even worry about it. Just use Zoom on your computer, which is actually still what I use. And just hit record. It was terrifying learning all of the new stuff, but also exciting because I like playing on the computer. I liked software and editing and anything that has to do with graphic design, I love. So building a website and the logo and all of that type of stuff was stuff that I absolutely loved. It was kind of crazy for me seeing that so many people would listen to it. And I didn't know what was good and what wasn't good. So then trying to figure out what was good and then realizing that there were a lot more people that listened to my podcast than listen to most people's podcasts, I was kind of shocked. Like, really? There are that many people that are interested in what I have to say? I didn't think that there was anything special about me. Like, I didn't think that me rambling on about my personality type would be interesting to anybody. I think that's part of the fear too, right? Of putting yourself out there that you won't be interesting, that people will be like, "Oh, that's stupid." Like that's just the initial thought that you have. And that's kind of part of doing something that makes you uncomfortable, right? Is there are going to be people out there that are like, "That's really stupid." Like everything that you have to say is annoying and ridiculous and you just need to stop. But there are going to be people who say that regardless of what you do, right? So you kind of have to learn how to manage the criticism or learn how to deal with it and take what you like and ignore the rest. Right? So it's been a challenge for me in a lot of ways. It's challenged me by being on camera. It's challenged me because I've had to learn a lot more about different types of software. It's challenged me because I realized how much confidence I don't have. And it's actually helped me build confidence because when you're doing something all the time that makes you uncomfortable, you'll learn how to be uncomfortable. Like you'll learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And then before you know it, you'll actually start easing into being comfortable. But then inevitably when that happens, there's somebody who like says something really nasty to me. Like, hey, you're not an INFJ because, you know, you have a YouTube channel and a podcast. But, you know, that's also another thing. It makes me uncomfortable, but it helps me with other areas of my personality that I'm trying to work on, like dealing with criticism. It's not something that I like doing, but something that, has to be done. I think the biggest thing that I've learned from my podcast is fighting fear with determination. A lot of times, there have been many times, many times in my life where I've let fear hold me back. I've let it stop me from doing the things that I wanted to do, from doing things that I knew that I could do. If I hadn't been afraid, I would have moved to North Carolina 10 years before I did. If I hadn't have been absolutely terrified, I would have moved to Boston long before I did. If I hadn't have been absolutely terrified, I probably would be married by now. So I've seen what happens when you let fear hold you back. And that's not something that I want to live with every single day. I don't want to live with the regret of what could have been, what could have happened. I was listening to a podcast the other day. I think it was Amy Porterfield's podcast. She was talking to somebody who, I forget who it was, but he was talking about writing your eulogy and looking at it every single day. When you set your goals for the day, are you actually working on stuff that you want your life to be about? Because he was talking about how we have goals for our life when we're young that are kind of set out for us, right? You want to graduate from school, from grade school. A lot of people have this goal of going to college. So you want to graduate from college. After you do that, you want to get a really good job so that you can buy a nice house and have a nice car. You want to get married and have kids. Well, what do you do after that? I used to tease my dad because my dad always had to, every time somebody asked him how old he was, he had to count. And I thought it was super funny. I'm like, how do you not know how old you are? And he's like, after 21, it really doesn't matter how old you are. And I'm like, why is that? And he goes, well, because that's, the age in the United States that you can legally drink is 21. So after that, it really doesn't matter how old you are. And I'm like, well, that's not true. At 65, you can retire. So like there is something to look forward to after that. And he didn't think it was very funny. but but I've thought about that too. Like, what is it that you're looking forward to? I'm gonna be 36 here just like next week. And I still have goals that I'm looking forward to because I haven't reached them yet. I'm not married, I don't have kids, but I like to plan ahead and think about the future. So I'm like, well, what would I be doing if I did have kids? Like, what's the point past kids? Because what I think about is getting married, like your wedding day. I think about what it would be like to have a baby. But then it's like, what's next? What do you do between the time when you have a baby and the time that you die? I mean, hopefully that's a lot of time, right? And if you have the things that you wanted, that I've spent almost 36 years looking forward to, what then? You really have to figure out what it is that you want your life to be filled with. What do you want? How do you want people to remember you? What kind of mark do you want to leave on the world? I was listening to another podcast a couple of weeks ago that I really, really, really suggest that you listen to if you haven't already. It was the Joe Rogan Experience, and it's kind of an older episode. He was talking to a girl named, I'm probably going to say her name wrong. I think it's Yemeni Park. It's probably wrong, but she's from North Korea. She escaped North Korea. And I mean, her story is just incredible. she was talking about how she had to walk across a desert to get to safety. I think that was how she got from North Korea into China. I don't remember. And then she ended up going to South Korea before she came to the United States. But she was talking about how there were a few times where she was positive that she was going to die because she had seen a lot of other people die. She said that she wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid that nobody knew that she had existed. That was one of the saddest things that I'd ever heard in my life. And I think it touched me so much because I felt the same way. That's really what I was afraid of too. When you think about it from that perspective, everything takes on a different meaning, right? When you think about how you want to be remembered, everything looks different. All of a sudden, you realize that being afraid to be in front of a video camera really isn't that big of a thing. You know, it is scary because on the one hand, you feel like you're going to die. Like you feel like you're so terrified. You know, what if I say something wrong? What if I look funny? What if somebody's like, oh my God, you're so fat? What if somebody's like, wow, what is that thing on your face? You know, these are the things that you think about. You're scared that you won't be able to pronounce words right, which has happened to me. And you're scared that you'll stumble over your sentences like I'm doing now. You're scared that you won't sound intelligent. I never worry about sounding intelligent until I get in front of a camera, because that's the times when I'm like super critical of what I'm saying and how it's coming out of my mouth. And the more experience that I have editing things, you get really critical of yourself then too, because that's when you start to realize, wow, I really can't pronounce words. That's a lot. But I think it also helps you to have a lot more compassion for yourself too. And it helps you to realize, okay, like, I feel like I'm gonna die, but the thing is that I didn't die. You know, I did a live video. I did a video and I didn't die. And then I did a live video. And even though I felt like it was the end of the world, it wasn't actually the end of the world. I've literally done videos where there were people in the comments saying the worst, nasty, horrifying things about me. It wasn't everybody in the comments. It was like one or two people. But I kept going and tried to ignore the comments and figured out how to block people during a show or, you know, during a live video after that, which is very helpful. But I mean, if you let the fear hold you back, what else is it holding you back from? It's not just videos. Videos is just one thing, right? That's just one example. But for us as introverts, how many things is fear holding you back from? Right? So many people, when I tell them that I moved 1,500 miles away from where I grew up, they look at me in awe and they say things like, wow, I can't believe you did that. How did you do that? And some people ask me for advice. One of my friends, who I absolutely adore, she lives in New York and she doesn't want to live in New York anymore. But all of her family is there and all of her friends are there and her job is there. And she's asked me several times, like, how do you get up and like pick your life up and move to a different state? And I was like, well, I think maybe it helped me that I wanted to get away from my family. It helped me that I didn't really have a lot of friends. It helped me that I didn't have a job a couple of times. It helped me that I didn't really have that much that was holding me there. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was still terrible. Even though my family and I operate a lot better when we live a long ways away from each other, it's not easy to leave. It's not easy to leave the friends that you have. It wasn't easy for me to leave my job. I had a job when I moved to Boston. I had a job where I was, and it was a decent job. But I remember going in to quit. I told my boss, I got this job and I'm moving to Boston. And he said, "You don't want to move to Boston." And I said, "Oh, really? Why don't I want to move?" And he's like, "Well, have you ever been there?" I'm like, "A couple times, yeah, actually." I didn't tell him that it was less than 48 hours that I had spent in Boston total before I decided to move. And he's like, "Well, I went there one time and my wallet got stolen when I was walking downtown." He's like, "You don't want to move there." And I'm like, okay, I'm thinking to myself, like, I didn't really say anything because I didn't know what to say. But I'm thinking to myself, that must have been a really bad experience. But can you really blame like the whole town of Boston? How many millions of people live there and you're blaming the whole town on one bad experience? And like, I need to know a lot more details. Like, was it nighttime? Were you drunk? I mean, like, what happened that you're blaming the whole town of Boston for this one bad thing that happened to you? I mean, I don't know. I've been downtown multiple times and nothing like that has ever happened to me. And now I'm not saying that it doesn't happen in Boston because I'm sure that it does. It happens in every big city. Um but I think a lot of it has to do with like where you're at and you know what time of day it is or night and how careful you are. um a lot of people just think that kind of stuff won't happen to them, and so they don't take the proper precautions. I have put myself in positions that could have been very terrible, though, I will say that. um but I think that there's so much of this fear that we let it hold us back. And I hope that you're not doing that. And I want to encourage you not to get stuck in fear, not to say, okay, this is my personality and I'm not doing anything other than that. That certainly isn't the reason that I want to teach people about their personality. I want to help you understand yourself so that you can understand why you do the things that you do, why you have the beliefs that you have, why you have the feelings that you have. I believe that if you can understand yourself, then you can understand other people better as well. And once you understand yourself, once you understand your fears, your concerns, your desires as well, then you can start working on the things that are holding you back. You can start pushing past the fear. You can start leaning into determination rather than fear. And you can start doing things that make you uncomfortable. I really feel like that's where you're going to find the answers that you're looking for. That's where you're going to find the meaning in life. That's where you're going to find all of the growth that you're looking for as well. You can read a million books. You can listen to a million podcasts. You can listen to me tell you what you should and shouldn't do all day long. But you're not going to really know for yourself until you start taking action. So whatever the thing is that you want to do, whatever your list of New Year's resolutions are for this year, I hope that you'll take that into consideration, and that rather than just thinking about things, rather than just planning things, you'll start taking action. You'll start challenging your fears and leaning into determination, because I'm positive that's where the answers are going to come from.
All right, I love this talk, but let's take a short break for a minute. I got a direct message the other day, one that was very familiar to me because I get it from a lot of people. But this particular one says, I love your content and I wish that there was more of it. I'm so inspired by you and I love how relatable you are. How do I get more? This is from Susan, who lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. Well, Susan, I have some good news for you. I'm starting an insiders group for you and for anyone listening who wants more content. It's called the INFJ Woman Insiders. With this group, you'll learn more about your INFJ personality and step into your highest and best self. You'll get at least 2 videos every single week from me, full of inspiration, guidance, and support. You'll also get 2 live videos a month where I show up to answer your questions and give you support and coaching. I'm also including exclusive access to behind the scenes of what's going on in my business and my life each and every week. If you want me there with you like a cheerleader and a coach, you'll want to become an insider. The INFJ Woman Insiders group is only $9.99 per month, and it's month to month, so you can cancel anytime. I'm here to support you in rising to your highest and best self. Are you ready? Let's go! Go to infjwoman.com/insider to sign up today. And if you sign up by the end of this week, I'm going to include access to my workshop called How to Go From Overthinking to Doing, absolutely free. Go to infjwoman.com/insider to sign up now. All right, so it's time for our Q&A. The first question says, what is the most difficult thing that you face being an INFJ? The most difficult thing for me, I feel like, is I have this, well, all INFJs, we have this ability to dream really big dreams, things that most people would think are like impossible and not going to happen. But as INFJs, we also have the ability to make those things happen. So, you know, we have a big dream and then we're like, okay, I'm definitely going to do this. And then you start putting together a plan and start taking steps to make that thing happen. And I think, equally blessed and cursed that some of those things that I felt like have been impossible have actually happened. I've put in the work and had the determination to make them happen, and some of them I feel like I've even willed into existence. But it's both a blessing and a curse because, you know, it's a blessing because you see your dreams coming true and you're like, this is awesome. But it's also a curse because as soon as you get the thing that you want, then you're ready to move on to the next goal that you have. And so you start to believe that impossible things are possible. And, you know, like I said, it's good and it's bad because sometimes impossible things aren't possible, but you have that proof that impossible things have happened before. So then it makes it really difficult to give up on things that you want to happen. And sometimes things are just impossible. So that's definitely difficult. Another question, do you just do it scared? Yes, pretty much. I love that phrase, do it scared. There's a lot of things that I do very scared. Writing is pretty scary for me. I mean, I love the process of writing, but sharing what I've written with other people is terrifying to me. Anytime that I have to be on video or audio recording, that is terrifying to me. But I've also learned to push through some of those fears because I don't want to let fear hold me back. I don't want to live in that fear. I want to be able to show other people that you can push through that fear. And, you know, just because you're an introvert doesn't mean that you can't have a YouTube channel. Just because you're an introvert doesn't mean that you can't do live videos on Instagram. I mean, you can do anything that you want to do. You just have to decide how bad do you want it. When I moved to North Carolina in my early 20s, and
I wanted to work around race cars. And so I got this job at this race shop for this, it was like, it wasn't the top tier of racing, it was like the second tier down. But it was one of the worst teams on the circuit, the most poorly funded team. And the owner of the team was like genuinely psychotic. So every single day there was some weird thing that he was doing that was like everybody that worked there was shaking their head, including me. And so every single day I used to call my dad and be like, you would not believe what this guy did today. And my dad would just laugh, and I would rant and rave about how, you know, this is never going to work and I couldn't stay working here. And my dad would say, how bad do you want it? How bad do you want to work in racing? How bad do you want to go to the racetrack? And I would inevitably decide that, yeah, okay, I want to go to the racetrack. I'll stay working with this guy. I'll get some experience, whatever it takes. And then what's funny is the job that I got a couple of years later, working for a marketing company that managed race car drivers and sponsors, I got that job because I worked for the other guy. So when I went in for an interview with the marketing company, the guy who was interviewing me asked me all the standard questions, and then he's like, you worked for this other dude? And I was like, yeah, I was there for about 6 months. And he goes, how did you stay there for 6 months? I'm like, what? Why do you know that guy? And he's like, yeah, we worked with him for about a year. He's like, I'm surprised anybody could work with him for that long. I'm like, yeah, it was really challenging. And he's like, well, you must have at least a little bit of determination or stick-to-itiveness, because if you work for that guy for 6 months, you can do anything. I was like, well, yeah, that's true. What I didn't know was that I was walking into working with somebody who was 10 times crazier than the previous guy, but that was a whole nother story. How can I let go of a person I love? She doesn't love me. That's one of the worst feelings in the world. I've been there multiple times, and it's so painful. What happens to me is that I usually fall for somebody who I don't know, or they're far enough away from me that I don't interact with them all the time. And I don't like to say that I'm a stalker, because I'm not really like a stalker. It's kind of like a gentle stalker. Like, I want to know everything about them before I start investing my time, which is probably not a good approach. Like, I'm not advocating for this, I'm just telling you what I do. So then what happens is I end up falling for people who don't really know me and have really no interest in me. And then it's really painful when I finally do get up the courage to talk to them and then they reject me. Then it's like horrifying. And I've been there a few times. And I really feel like it's one of the worst pains that you can feel, because it's not just emotional pain. Sometimes it ends up being physical pain. And the best thing that I can tell you is that you have to decide that it's time to move on. That's what I did. I had to decide that it was time. And the one time that was, I literally didn't think I was going to make it through that, because I was so attached to this one person. Like, I genuinely spent every single day thinking about them all the time. And when I came to the decision that I had to let go of them, I didn't understand how that would work, because I thought about them constantly and I couldn't see myself not thinking about them. But once I made that decision, I had to make an effort to stop thinking about them. So I stopped talking to them. I got rid of all of the pictures and things that I had of them. I stopped obsessing over little things that reminded me of them. Like, I had to make a conscious effort, and it was painful. It was really painful. And there were days that was like, I'm not, like, this isn't gonna work. I'm not gonna make it through this. But little by little, I did eventually start to move on. And for me, it was like little by little at first, like a little bit at a time at first, and then all at once. I don't really remember how long it took, but I do remember one day realizing that I hadn't thought about them that day. And it was like, wow, that's weird. Like, I didn't think that that would ever happen. I didn't think that I would ever not think about them. I didn't think it was possible. And then after that, it was kind of like all at once. It was like I finally realized that it was possible and that I did make it through and it wasn't the end of the world. And everything was okay. I would suggest, though, if you're going through something like this, that you read a book by Byron Katie. The one that I have is called I Need Your Love. Is That True? It's a really good book. She has 4 questions, basically, that she asks, which the first question is this true? So you start with a statement, right? So my statement would have been, I can't live without this guy, right? So the first question is that true? And automatically you think, yes, that's true. Of course it's true. I feel like it's true. I believe that it's true. Of course it's true. So then the second question is it always true 100% of the time? Is there any possibility that it might not be true? Well, there was a time before I met this guy that I didn't know him and I lived without him just fine. So obviously it's not true that I can't live without him. So then you go to the next question. It's, the statement you've basically just proved to yourself it's not true. You can actually live without him. You just don't want to. So then the next question is, how does it make you feel when you believe that this statement is true? So how does it make me feel when I believe that I can't live without this guy? It makes me feel horrible. It makes me feel like if I can't have him, then I want to die. Like, it was that bad. It was really, really bad. I couldn't imagine my life without him. I didn't want to think about my life without him. It was like the whole world revolved around him, and I was positive that the world would stop spinning if I wasn't with him. I was just so positive that this was one of those impossible things that I was talking about before. I believed that it would happen because so many other impossible things had happened. And so I just thought that if I was determined enough and if I stuck with it enough, that it would happen. That he would fall in love with me the same way that I had fell in love with him. And it didn't happen. And what finally made me realize that I had to get over him was he got married to somebody else. It's a good reason to move on, right? Obviously. So how does it make you feel was the question. Well, it made me feel awful. It made me feel like there was no point in living. So then the last question is, how would it make you feel if you didn't believe the statement? So how would it make you feel if it's not true? Well, if I didn't believe that I couldn't live without him, then I wouldn't feel so bad. If I believed that there was life after him, then, I would still feel sad because I still wanted him to be a part of my life. But I think I would have hope. And even now, trying to answer this question is like, remembering all of those feelings and being in that space is like, ugh. I feel bad for the girl who went through that because it was terrible. But knowing that there's hope, I mean, that was a big thing for me. I couldn't see the hope. But once I started to take action and say, okay, this has to stop, then I could see the hope. And like I said, it took a while, but it did eventually work out. So I would definitely, if you're in that position, I would get Byron Katie's book because it's really good. She does another thing which she calls turning the statement around, which is a lot more difficult for me to describe to you. But basically, you think about the statement, which was, I can't live without him, basically. And the way that she turns it around is like you have to figure out how it's acceptable every time you turn it around. So maybe the first time you turn it around is you go from I can't live without him to I can live without him, to maybe he's better off without me. Maybe I'm better off without him. Just any way that you can think of to turn it around. And the whole process is to help you to realize that you can't believe everything that you think. Just because you think something doesn't mean that it's true. A lot of us aren't taught to question our thoughts. We just think something and therefore it must be true because we've always thought it. Maybe somebody told us that thing. Maybe it was your parents or your grandparents or your teacher, and maybe you've just always known it and you don't know where you came to you don't know who told you. You've just always believed that it was true. So if you don't ever question those thoughts, then you can't get around or get through a lot of the big issues that come up in your life, because some of the things that you just think that you always have known to be true aren't actually true. So Byron Katie is a great person to, really any of her books are awesome. But if you're struggling with letting go of somebody, that book is a great one. It's called I Need Your Love. Is that true? All right. Well, I think that that's all that we have time for today. Make sure that you join me on Instagram so that you can join these live. I'll be live every Tuesday at noon Eastern time to answer your questions. So bring your questions and I will see you again. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate every single one of you. Please make sure that you subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a review wherever you listen to the podcast. It helps other people to be able to find us. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you again next week. Hi there. I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Please consider subscribing to my channel. I'm working very hard to produce content that will help you, and I really, really appreciate your support. Also, if you want some more inspiration, check out this video right here.